Welcome into episode 538 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Bridget and Scott, it's been about three plus weeks since we've had Bruins action, and it's kind of difficult to go from the magnitude of some of the games we saw in the Olympics to Bruins Blue Jackets on a Thursday night, but there are some heavy implications on that game. And of course, it's a 25 game sprint to the postseason, and the Bruins are currently in a playoff spot. So there's a lot to get to.
The trade deadline is a few days away. So the trade deadline's a few days away, but we're right back to it. So March 6th is right around the corner.
Yeah.
It always throws me off, like having, this is complete aside and mostly just my own stupidity, but having the trade deadline the first week of March always throws me off because February is so short that, like, in my head, I'm like, that's still like 2 weeks away. And it's like, nope, it's next Friday. It's next week because stupid February is only has to be 28 days.
Yeah, exactly. And with all the snow that Mother Nature is dumping on us, I feel like we've just been distracted with actual life. And then, as I said, we're coming off the Olympic break, and it's just, oh shit, yeah, here we go. 25 games left, trade deadline next week, and we got to pick things back up where we left off. So with that said, Bridget, do you want to start with your opening shift?
Yeah. So I think the main thing, now that we're transitioning back to talking about the Bruins after a majority of the last few episodes talking mostly just about Olympics, is that all of the Bruins players came back healthy. And this is really, really important. This is something that I'm sure every team's fan base was worried that their best players that were over there were going to come back injured. And some of that was realized. We still haven't heard what's going on with Sidney Crosby and how long he'll be out. Kevin Fiala out for the season. Like, those are the worst case scenarios that happened to some fan bases, but especially after the injury history that Hampus Lindholm has and what happened to Charlie McAvoy at Four Nations last year, there was some real fear from Bruins fans heading in, sending guys to the Olympics, because there's always a risk of injury, and the fan base was going through it last year. And that was such a major turning point in the season when McAvoy gets his shoulder injury, has to have surgery, doesn't come back for the rest of the season. That was kind of the moment, I think, that it was clear to Don Sweeney that this, we have to give up on the idea that this is a playoff team and we have to change our mindset to be sellers. And I think it could have been the same thing this year. I think it could have been you come back with an injury to Pastrnak or McAvoy and you're like, all right, this changes. Because it's a week from Friday, right? So it's only a little over 7 days that they have to make this decision. And a big injury could have really factored in. Luckily, that hasn't happened. And all of the Bruins stars came back fully healthy, it seems. So maybe we get to see David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy actually playing and others playing at a higher pace, playing at that elevated pace of what the Olympics can be, rather than banged up and or out of commission for the rest of the season. So I think big bullets dodged there, the fact that everybody's coming back healthy. And now you can go back to what you were doing before, which was trying to make a push for the playoffs. And you have a legitimate chance that it remains, in your grasp, because that hasn't happened. And so I think there's got to be at least some positivity coming out of the fact that part of the team has been able to rest and get better. And like Pavel Zacha is closer and didn't hurt himself even more going to the Olympics. And the rest of the guys came back healthy as far as we know. So setting themselves up for a final run here where it looks like they're in a pretty decent spot right now.
Yeah, definitely important for them to come back with health. And you mentioned some other teams and some other players that aren't as fortunate, right? So one of them obviously being Sidney Crosby. And it's interesting that the Penguins and Avalanche had an interesting trade the other day. Didn't see that one coming. Sam Girard going from Colorado to Pittsburgh. I'm not, up to date on every player's contract situation throughout the league. So I'm not sure what his contract status was. I don't know if he was an impending free agent or whatnot. But to me, Girard just kind of seems like a guy that's always been kind of a fixture on that back end for the Avalanche, who are obviously having a phenomenal season. So I'm a little bit surprised by that. You could call it a lateral move. You could make the argument that Pittsburgh got the better player. I'm just that was interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, yes. So Sam Girard has another year after this at $5 million a year. And Pittsburgh also gets a second round pick in that for, and all Colorado gets is Brett Kulak. So I do think part of that was from Colorado's end, like seemingly a salary dump. And I think they now have $8 million in cap space. So you got to imagine they're, or even more, you got to imagine they're lining up something bigger. So yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh takes it on, but ultimately I end up liking that for Pittsburgh. I think I saw basically their trade of Tristan Jarry now, because that's how they got Kulak in the first place. Basically, they've now flipped Tristan Jarry for Stuart Skinner, Sam Girard, and 2 second-round picks. Now, I don't like Stuart Skinner, but like the Girard and 2 second-round picks part, like pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's just a reminder of you just, you never know what's out there between GM group chats and whatnot, and so we'll see how it pertains to the Bruins. Speaking of which, my opening shift has to do with just that. We have seen some rumor and innuendo out there the last couple of days, even the last week or so, with the trade deadline on the horizon. I think it was the 4th period, and they had a trade. What do you want to call it? A trade list or trade watch, something like that. And a few names were linked to the Bruins. One very interesting, but Justin Faulk over in St. Louis, Rasmus Ristolainen with the Flyers, and then old friend Jake DeBrusk with the Vancouver Canucks. And apparently the Kraken and the Red Wings are also interested in Jake DeBrusk. So we can get to that speculation a little bit later on, and if that's anything that you guys would be interested in with either of those players. I think when we're having these discussions, it always kind of comes back to cost, right? Like what are you giving to get? But that's my opening shift. We can touch on that later on.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that, especially the DeBrusk part. That was one of those I was like not expecting to see.
Yeah, when we'd heard it about Carlo, people were like, yeah, maybe you get Carlo back cheaper. And it's like the same idea for DeBrusk. It's like 2 guys that I think people were not so sad that they went away and would be maybe angry if they came back. So
yeah, at least I'll save it. That like there's certainly key differences there, but my opening shift is something I would rather not be talking about, to be completely honest. I do not like talking about politics. There's a reason that a long time ago in the college newspaper office, when I could go to the sports desk or the news politics desk, I picked sports. But there are times that politics enter sports and become part of the discussion, and quite frankly, become just impossible to ignore. And that has clearly happened with the U.S. men's hockey team this week, where there's been a lot of celebration on one side of their seeming embrace of Donald Trump, and a lot of criticism from the other side of some of the things that this team has done in the wake of winning Olympic gold, starting from inviting Kash Patel into the locker room for the celebration, the director of the FBI, to the phone call with Trump, laughing at his joke about the women's team, to going to the White House and going to the State of the Union on Tuesday night. So, my own political beliefs, I honestly don't think are particularly relevant here. What I would say is that you cannot do the things that they have done and not expect a backlash. Like I've seen some comments of people like even Jack Hughes. So like everyone makes things so political, and it's like, well, you guys made this political. Like you literally opened the doors to it by inviting Kash Patel into your post-game celebration. He was the only person in there who wasn't part of the team, either a player, coach, or staff. Kash Patel is a Trump puppet. Like that's what, like he has his job because he has been loyal to Trump going back a decade. My own opinion is he's not particularly qualified for that job, but he has it because he's been loyal to Donald Trump. You don't get to do that and then like be surprised that people are pushing back against you and are upset about it. You don't get to laugh at that joke that he makes, which I will give at least a tiny bit of grace to the players and say that I actually do think their support, most of them, I think their support of the women's hockey team is genuine. I don't think it's just for show. But you got to understand that when you laugh at that comment, which makes it seem like Donald Trump is disappointed to be inviting the women's team or to have to invite them, it does not look good for you. And it is going to come with backlash. And we have not really we've heard some players say, address it in the sense of saying like, hey, no, we do support them. And, people shouldn't like get that twisted. You haven't heard like an apology. You haven't heard that. Then going to the White House is one thing, right? Championship teams generally go to the White House. Even that has become politicized over the last decade, but that is still a tradition that goes back many decades across many presidents and different political parties. I don't have an issue with going to the White House to celebrate. Going to the State of the Union is again a little different. Like that is a political event. That is not a celebration of your team. That is a nearly 2-hour speech that Trump treats essentially as a campaign rally where he, touts all his usual talking points, attacks Democrats, attacks anyone who doesn't like him. Like it's a political rally, basically. So they go to that. Most of the team, I think all but 5 or 6 players were there. And you have them taking photos with members of the Trump administration, and you have Tage Thompson wearing a MAGA hat. Again, like you are bringing politics into it. So then don't be upset when people on the other side of the aisle criticize you for it. Like that comes with the territory. Donald Trump is not a popular president. Latest approval ratings have him at 39% approval, 60% disapproval. Lowest of his 2 terms. There are obviously a lot of controversial things happening in this country right now. You entered that fray. That was a choice that you made. There are consequences that come along with that. So just don't, you are free to celebrate however you want. You're adults. You can make your own decisions. You can celebrate wherever you want with whoever you want. Free country, you're allowed to do that. But you don't get to then ignore people calling you out for where you are or who you're with.
Yeah. And I do think that when they get back to their teams, like I think they've taken so much time, right? Like, first of all, I feel like if it were me, I would have been way too hungover to go to the State of the Union after watching what they've been doing the last few days, that's all fine. Like at some point though, you got to stop and you got to get some rest. And I just, I felt like that was probably a good time to go home. Maybe say hi in the morning and head out back to your teams because you have to go play hockey in the NHL again. You guys,
I did see that at least Clayton Keller, and I don't know if he might have been the only one, but Clayton Keller was at the White House in the morning and then left before the State of the Union and was back in Utah last night.
Yeah, that would have been the seemingly smart thing to do. As of today, Scott, you're about to go to practice. They called up Mike DiPietro because I'm not sure Swayman or McAvoy is going to be back for today's practice. And, maybe the game, we'll see. I think they should be ready for that, but it's been a crazy week for them. So anyway, yeah, you guys know that before we recorded the last episode, we decided not to touch it. But that for the 10 minutes before the episode, I was pretty upset. I was telling you guys about how the comment about the women's team and the amount of laughter it got, how disheartening that was for a lot of people. I think for me, I work in women's sports. I used to play. and to just listen to everybody laugh like that was funny, like, oh, they have to come, like, it just felt like the whole tournament was you're finally seeing approval and acceptance, and like there's been such exponential growth in the last 4 years for the support of women's hockey from the NHL guys, from everyone, but from those guys too. And then it just felt like all of that went away in 1 second of laughter, and really infuriating. And I hope everybody gets asked about it. I mean, if I get a chance to, I'm going to ask about it, because I think that they should be given a chance to say sorry if they feel sorry, but maybe they don't, and that's telling as well. So I thought that it's all been a terrible look, and yeah, I don't think really, if you were going to say politics shouldn't be in sports, well, how else are people supposed to react to them going to the State of the Union, which is the most political thing? Like, you see, like, different, say the Celtics win a title. Okay, well, maybe they just go to the White House. They're not going to what's essentially a rally. So, and that associates you now with every single topic that he is talking about, because they're just going to show your reaction and if you're approving of it or not. So it's all connected to you now. So they should have just not filmed in the locker room, not had Cash Patel in the locker room, not created the ability for people to say, I no longer like this team, because I don't think it lasted very long. I think people watched the team win, were laughing at their drunken celebrations, and then saw the video come out of the phone call and immediately lost their joy of watching that team. And I know it affected a lot of people negatively, and there's going to be people who comment on this podcast that we're doing now and say, oh, you it's so stupid you're talking about this, you made it political. Like, no, they made it political. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'll just keep it very brief. The first thing is, I think that the joke that Trump made, I think there's a lot of reason to question that joke. I think that for people to expect everybody who just got off the ice winning an Olympic gold medal, laughing and drinking with their friends, probably not even hearing everything that Trump is saying because he's 10 feet away on a cell phone, for people to think that the real time reaction would have been silence or telling the president over the phone from the cheap seats that he's wrong for making that joke, I just think that sometimes it's very easy to be a Monday morning quarterback and things happen quick in life. And I'm not saying that people, don't deserve the backlash. I think that
now is their chance to apologize for it. So now we're going to find out, whether, and I know the Hughes were on, is it Good Morning America, or they were on in the morning, and we know their mother is involved in the women's team. And I didn't hear them say sorry. And
that's to me. And that's the part that, again, it's fair game. My commentary right now is simply on the moment that caused all this. As far as the after effects of it and or lack thereof, I think that's fair game. The only other comment I wanted to make was, it's disappointing that, just generally speaking, right? Back in 1980, right, the U.S. men's team won Olympic gold and brought a nation together, right? Women and men just won gold at the Olympics. It's very frustrating that all of this in general has been hijacking what should be celebration for both teams winning a gold medal and being a positive thing for the country. So just in totality, this whole thing being a thing right now is incredibly disappointing, because that's not what Olympic gold is supposed to do for a country. So I think it speaks to a lot of things, really. But I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I feel the same way. Like I said off the top, I would rather just be talking about hockey and not having any of this. But they did it to themselves, starting with literally opening the door to bring politics into the locker room right after winning gold. Like, Kash Patel is a political figure. That's why he's known. Like, it's the only reason he's known. And I was listening to What Chaos there. It was either like late Sunday night or Monday episode with DJ Bean and Pete Blackburn. And like DJ, I think, put it best. He was like, someone has to speak up there and be like, hey, Kash, thanks for coming. We're glad you're here. Guys, we'll meet up with you after. We're celebrating as a team right now. Like, he just shouldn't have been in there. And that, I think it like all starts from there. I think the reason that phone call gets taped is because he's in there and he's the one who has Trump on the phone. And like, and that probably doesn't even start as a player's decision, right? Like, I'd read in The Athletic that apparently it was Bill Guerin who invited Kash Patel in. I would say like misstep as someone on team management. Like, that moment should have been kept to your team. The director of the FBI did not need to be in there and should not have been in there.
Like, that's a crazy sentence that you even had to say. Like, the director of the FBI.
Yeah.
Like, why is that even a thing? Like, it doesn't make sense.
But the other thing you're saying too, Scott, see, that's the part that kind of, to me, gets lost in all this, is like, these players were just on the ice. They were just playing Canada in overtime. And then in real time, you're talking like, 20 minutes after winning a game, because they were on the ice for another 18 for the medal ceremony. All this shit is in their locker room and they're being filmed without knowing. And how many times in life do we all, like, you hear somebody say something and maybe you chuckle just out because you're on autopilot, or you don't hear everything. Like, I just think like what you said, Scott, is accurate. Like, it all kind of starts with that the FBI guy being in there, and he's probably calling Trump and the fact that it's all viral. But like, to damn these players who just won Olympic gold for their country, and like a moment of, they're also just in complete euphoria having just won an Olympic gold, like for the first time in nearly 50 years for the country. It's just, I think it's, the whole situation, I think, is just, the whole situation, I just think, is unfortunate. Everybody involved, I think some of the backlash has been warranted. I think some of it's been unrealistic. I think that the adults in the room, if Bill Guerin brought that guy in, then, you're putting your players in a tough spot there. You're putting your players in a hell of a tough spot there to be vilified now by how many people out there, when, again, women and men should both be celebrated for winning gold for their country. And these players are athletes.
And not laughed at, right, though? And not laughed at, though. So, yeah.
Yes,
like,
yes.
It was, to me, it was like an over-the-top laugh, right? Like, I don't know. I watched it multiple times trying to see if anybody had a reaction that was like, oh, that was a weird thing to say. You can hear two guys.
But do you guys think that, like, this world that we all live in, right? It's like, we talk about hockey all the time, a roster on paper versus how you perform on the ice. Like, you don't always perform on paper. It would have been great for that to happen, Bridget. But like, do you think that a room full of people are gonna sit there and say, Trump, bad joke, get him off the, like, it's not.
No, but they could have made a different facial expression. They didn't have to laugh. Like, I don't know.
Some people made some comments saying that they should be there, and
I know those two people. I'm not even sure who they were. I'm not sure who said absolutely they should be there, and I'm not sure who said 2 for 2. But it didn't deserve the. It's just a bad look. It's spiraled or snowballed into what it currently is, and by not addressing it and not saying, hey, we didn't really, we didn't know he was going to say that, and we're sorry. And by then following it up with going to the State of the Union, it just makes it seem like they were in on the joke. So,
well, that's where I think the ball has been dropped a bit is like, I think the real time reaction, I think, is probably unfair to think that they would have had the reaction that people wanted them to have in that moment. I think, like, we are all humans, and it's difficult in real time with so much going on internally and externally around you to have the proper PC reaction. But the post effects, I think that the ball has been dropped in the sense of, you've had an opportunity to, say the right thing. And I think that hasn't been done. So I think it's very layered, and like I said, I just think that it's disappointing that this show in particular, we've cheered on the women. We've been huge advocates of women's hockey and the growth of the game. And of course, Bridget, with you on our show, I think, and I speak for myself, and I think I speak for Scott too, like we very much like support and want that recognition. So, and I saw the women's game and watched their tournament and was through the roof when they won their game, just like I was through the roof when the men won. And again, like growing up and just like knowing the impact that the 1980 gold medal, team had on this country, a time where this country was in not a good space, right? Morally, emotionally, and certainly politically. And that win lifted a nation. And to me, it's disappointing that here we are, nearly 50 years later, and you have not one but two teams win Olympic gold, and the reaction from the country is anything but. And I know that there's people involved in those teams that made this, kind of come to the forefront. And I'm talking, even from the managerial perspective of the men's team, right? It's just disappointing. The whole thing, the fact that we have to talk about this for a half hour. The fact that this story is out there, it's just disappointing that it all happened. And it's like you win 2 Olympic gold medals, and you see all the commentary from a lot of the Canadian fans about how they were the better team, and a lot you expect stuff like that. To have internal hostility after winning 2 Olympic gold medals, I think speaks to a lot of right now where this country kind of stands. I think everybody needs to kind of, I don't know, just be better, really. Like everybody. It's disappointing. Really disappointing.
Yeah, it is.
And it starts at that moment. Sure. I'm just saying everything.
Yeah, and it starts and it continues with leaning in from there. Going to the state of, like, the White House visit could have been enough. Everyone could have said the same thing the women's team said, and said, we appreciate the invite to the State of the Union, but we all have teams we have to get back to, and we just can't make it work. They could have done that. They didn't. No one made, as far as I know, no one forced Tage Thompson to wear a MAGA hat. And like they're taking photos with all his teammates, and it's like, again, like I think most of those players are okay with all this. Like, I mean, we'll see, right? Like most of them are going to be asked about it, but there was a lot of leaning into it rather than any kind of backtracking. So again, like they're right, but also everyone else, it's also other people's right to be upset about that.
And it is our right to proceed to the rest of the episode. If you guys, unless you have any final thoughts on it, and
nope.
Okay. So we'll go with the trade speculation and some of the names that we heard out there involving the Bruins. Where do you want to start? You want to start Justin Faulk, Rasmus Ristolainen, players that could make sense on the right side, or do you want to start off hot and heavy with old friend Jake DeBrusk? What do you guys want?
Let's start with Faulk and Ristolainen, because I think those two make more sense and have been names we've brought up before. My feeling here is like, yeah, I think either one of those players makes the Bruins a better team right now. I do think they would be upgrades on the right side. If we're just talking about their games, I think I like Justin Faulk a little more. I like that he brings a little bit more offensively. Ristolainen more of a defensive, physical presence, but Faulk can play physical too. Like he'll throw his weight around a bit. I just think Faulk would bring more of what this team maybe lacks on the back end, which for most of the season has been offense from the back end. Justin Faulk does have 11 goals this year. He has a really good shot. He's a really good skater. He's very mobile. Even at 33 years old, he's still a very good skater. That intrigues me a little bit more. Ristolainen, I think last time we brought him up, I mentioned like I used to not really be a fan of his game. I thought he was a highly touted player when he was younger. I thought he was pretty disappointing for a long time. I didn't think he was very good defensively, which was supposed to be his strength. it does look like he's figured some things out in Philly. Like whether that's watching him or like diving into the analytics, like things have improved. And it seems like he's has learned to play a more mature game. I still don't know that like I fully trust that it would translate to the really stout kind of shutdown defense that the Bruins would be expecting him to play if you plug him in your second pairing. But he did also just have a good Olympics, which is a big reason his name is now really heating up. He played big minutes for Finland on a team that won bronze and looked pretty good. So I don't love the age of the term. Both guys have 1 year after this. I still think the Bruins should be looking a little further into the future than that. It's obviously much better than a pure rental, but I don't know that even a year and a half, bringing in a year and a half guy really makes a ton of sense with where this team is.
Not worth giving up a first round pick that you've now, gotten back in your system. So yeah, and Faulk's contract is a little bit bigger, I think, than what you would want to add as well. He's, I think, 6.5 AAV, and that's that's a pretty fair chunk of change there. And he's 33 years old, so, and like you mentioned, he'd be here for the end of this season plus next season. Now, do they try to flip him next season? You know what I mean? Like, this just keeps happening to guys that have that expiring contract. But or maybe extend him, but like I said, he's 33. So it could be difficult. And obviously the ideal situation would be to get someone more in their prime than that. But are those guys available? So, well, I mean, and how much do you have to give up for someone like that if they were available? Because the ask would be a lot more than what you're going to have to pay for these two.
And if they're not available, right, that's the question is, do you try to capitalize on one of these two guys who you can make the argument that Ristolainen could be part of your intermediate future at 31 years old, Faulk a little bit less so at 33. But if those younger players aren't available that are more in their prime, do you exercise patience and just, see if you draft somebody or do you wait till free agency and see what else is out there? Like we aren't giving up any assets, right? I like Justin Faulk as a player. I do. And if the Bruins were in a position where they were a contender this year and next year, maybe the year after, but let's just stick to this year and next year, which is his contract, then I think Faulk makes a lot of sense. But for a team that is trying to find their way, and I just, I don't think it hurts to have a veteran on the blue line, no doubt about it. But as long as you're not giving up a lot for him, right? And he does fill a need because they don't have anybody right-handed in the system right now beyond McAvoy. And I mean, really, if we're talking true top four players, it's really that. And they haven't drafted anybody yet. So they could draft somebody in June, but they're trying to make a deal right now, potentially. So I don't,
Oh.
Oh no, I thought maybe that was me.
Frozen Brian. I was worried about my internet today, but we got a frozen Brian. If people on YouTube can enjoy. Oh nope, he's unfrozen. Okay.
Oh boy, what was the last thing you heard me say? I'm sorry about that.
Trying to think where you were.
I'll just say what I was saying, which was maybe Faulk, because he's only a temporary guy. Maybe he's somebody who can bridge you until maybe you draft somebody at that position long term, or find a longer term. You know what I mean? Like that could be their methodology too.
Yeah, and I mean on the return, in terms of like what it would take to get him, the reports are that the Blues are looking for a Rasmus Anderson type package, which, as a refresher, Calgary got from Vegas defenseman Zach Whitecloud, so a legitimate NHL defenseman, prospect Abram Wiebe, who I think is a little lower ranked prospect, a 2027 first round pick, and a conditional 2028 second round pick, which
not doing that.
is like, that's a lot. First off, I just don't think St. Louis is going to get that for Faulk. I mean, you can ask for it. Like, you can start there, but even if it's like something a little less than that, like I'm not doing a first and third for Faulk. I'm not doing a first and a prospect. Like I just wouldn't be comfortable giving up that much for him because look, maybe the Bruins are I don't think they're a Stanley Cup contender this year. I think they should be a playoff team, but I don't think Justin Faulk puts them over the top. Maybe they find a way to be a Stanley Cup contender next year if enough goes right between now and then, but I wouldn't really be banking on that. And like if you're getting 33-year-old Justin Faulk with 1 year left after this, it seems like you're kind of like planning on that being the case. And I just worry that's like that's a bit too optimistic about where you are in this retool.
And that goes against what you did last trade deadline, which was to try to replenish. Unless you think you already got enough and you've already replenished, with Hagens, and I guess you still would have the Toronto pick or the Florida pick or whatever. You still have one or two of those left if you decided to give up a first round for that. But it doesn't make sense for the team, a kind of team in the middle. It makes sense for a legitimate contender who's kind of a little bit more desperate to put their team over the edge. It just feels like it's that kind of ask would be to a team that legitimately thinks this is a year that they are going to do it. So
yeah, and I mean, again, I'll stick to Ristolainen here because he's younger, and I think he probably brings a little bit more oomph to your blue line than Faulk, just based on his size and defensive physicality and stuff. But if you don't love the free agency class this summer, if you think that you're going to draft a right-handed shot defenseman this June, but maybe he's a year or two away, maybe you are willing to part with a couple of assets that aren't too great, but whatever, maybe enough to get the deal done, to bring in Ristolainen for the next couple of years, right? Because you don't have that need, right? You don't have that player to fill that need right now, and maybe you don't love the free agency classes, right? Or the way that free agents just keep re-upping with their current teams. In that situation, I could see why the Bruins would say, okay, well, let's just for now, for the next couple of years, at least we know we have McAvoy, Ristolainen, right? And Jokiharju for now, whatever. But at the same time, I very much understand why people would say, no, don't bother. You've gotten to this point with your blue line so far, just ride with what you have into the playoffs and don't give up any assets. Like, because what's the delta between having Ristolainen as your second right shot defenseman right now, or what were their pairs when we last left off? Was it Peak or Jokiharju?
I think it was Zadorov, Peak. Yeah, because it was Aspro, McAvoy, Zadorov, Peak, Lindholm, Lohrei.
Now Peak's another guy, right? It's like he's somebody that people are talking about potentially moving to get something for, right? So I mean,
well, yeah, I like that. I mean, that's like a fascinating part of this too, because they keep getting linked to these right shot defensemen, and it's like, well, someone's got to go. Like they're not adding a defenseman without subtracting someone. I don't think that they're already at, once everyone's back from, once McAvoy's back from Olympics, like they're at 8 defensemen on the NHL roster, and none of them can be sent down without waivers. So someone's going, and like Peak's an obvious one because he's a pending unrestricted free agent. I think if you gave the Bruins truth serum, I think they'd tell you they'd probably like to re-sign Peak, have him be their third pairing right side defenseman, and find a way to move on from Jokiharju. But the difference there is like Jokiharju has 2 more years after this at $3 million a year. I think other teams are going to, if you're trying to talk Henry Jokiharju trades, other teams are going to view that as, oh, you're just trying to dump a contract, and they're not going to give you anything. Peak, I think, has real trade value as a rental who plays the kind of style that teams heading to the playoffs look at and go, yeah, we want that on our third pair. So Peak probably gets you more, but I also think like push comes to shove, he's the guy the Bruins would rather hang on to. But then like, who knows what's going on with contract talks there? Like, yeah, if you're the Bruins, you got to know in this next week whether re-signing Peak is like a real possibility, whether that's because you have a roster logjam or the money or the term, whatever it is. Like, you got to know, because if you come to the conclusion in these next 7-8 days that, hey, we're kind of not really close, and I don't know if we're going to be keeping him beyond this year, probably got to trade him. Like, get something, because you already have a logjam anyways.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, do you want to keep him, right? Like, it's the two things. Like, can you and do you want to are two different things. So
I think they do. Like, my sense is that, like, in the Bruins' perfect world, like, Don Sweeney gets everything he wants and everything works out. He has, on the right side of his defense, he has McAvoy, new player X to slot in on the second pair, Andrew Peak on the third pair. I think he would trade Henry Jokiharju's contract in a heartbeat if they got an offer for it. I just don't think they're really going to get anything meaningful for him.
Does that mirror what you would hope for, best case scenario, as well, as a spectator?
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, but the problem is the contracts are the opposite of what you would want with Peak and Jokiharju, because that was a desperation offseason move where you can't just, I guess this season, can't just hope that you're going to find someone in free agency necessarily, because that was your option. There was no one else there. And so an extension gets made for him, because if you look around, what else were they supposed to do there? Right? Like, it was filling in a gap that they needed to fill. Did the contract need to be longer than a year? Probably not. But like, that was what they were left with as an option. So you don't want to put yourself in a situation where Peak has his contract expire and there's a hole you got to fill if he leaves. And then you're really in trouble, because if there's nobody out there in free agency, what do you do there? And your right side would get worse. And even if you did draft a guy there, they're not going to be there next year. So that's a longer term thing. And we've talked about how trades and additions should be done while McAvoy and Pasternak are in their prime, and not be, just sitting around waiting for those guys the drafted guys to develop and come in, because that's going to be later on. So yeah, I think it's become extremely obvious that this is the biggest area of need for them, which at past deadlines, it was not what we were saying. It's almost always been forward depth. Middle six forward is always kind of what we've talked about. But this year, right shot defenseman is up there. And I think everybody knows to call Don Sweeney if they have somebody that they're trying to shop.
So let me ask you guys this. Assuming, let's just say Don was able to maneuver some things around and he had an opportunity to bring in player X for that second pair. Two-part question. Would you rather it be A, Ristolainen or Faulk? And B, where would you draw the line at, this is what I'd be willing to give up for either player at most? Anything beyond that, not worth it for me.
Even though he's older, I would still rather Faulk, because I just like his game more. But here's the thing. It's like, I know I'm not, if I'm the GM, it's totally up to me. I know I'm not offering enough to get him, because I'm like, I wouldn't put either of my first round picks this year on the table for either one of those guys.
No.
And I kind of think you're going to have to, like, I think you're probably going to have to at least give up your own. I mean, maybe you can give your 2027 pick. I don't know about the Panthers one, because that could still potentially get pushed all the way to 2028. So I don't know how much other teams value that. Like, I don't know. I would be really hesitant to put any first round pick on the table for either one of those guys. So I don't think I would be offering enough to get them.
If it starts with a first round pick, I'm not a chance in hell am I relinquishing any first round pick in the Bruins cupboard for either one of those players.
Yeah, and that wasn't the only thing on the list. So if you're comparing it to the Rasmus Anderson, which doesn't make sense to me, Do you think that's a fair comp?
I don't. That's me surprising anyway. Like Anderson's, I mean, he's younger. He's in his prime. He's a legit like top 4 defenseman. Like that's weird to me.
I think the argument from St. Louis, if you were Don Sweeney and you came to me, Doug Armstrong, saying that, like, how can you think he gets as much as Rasmus Anderson? Doug Armstrong, go, well, he has another year after this. And Rasmus Anderson's still at this moment a pending unrestricted free agent. Like, Calgary got that without any extension in place. So that would be the argument. And that is a fair thing for Doug Armstrong to say. Again, if it's me, I'm just like, okay, well, good luck. Let me know if the price comes way down.
Yeah. No, and that should be the response. Again, none of these two defensemen are. This is just podcast conversation because we're trying to get our feet wet in here after a long Olympic break. So, but
okay, so next up, so how many first round picks are you trading for DeBrusk?
All right, so this one to me, I mean, I'm sure we have a lot of thoughts on this. I want to start off by saying right now, I have always loved DeBrusk's speed, skating, and natural skill set. How often he decides to use it has always been my problem with him. I've always found him to be somebody who, when he decides he wants to be a difference maker, he is, and he can be. It's way too few and far between. I've always dogged him for his inconsistent efforts. And again, the only time I really get pissed off at a player is when I don't see the effort. Like, if someone doesn't have the skill and they're not executing, I can see through that. But like, I know what Jake's capable of. We saw it for a long time, and he goes in and out far too often. And so I like his skill set. I don't like his inconsistencies. I never have. And he's been in Vancouver for a season and a half on a fresh long contract. Now I know that they're a bit of a dumpster fire right now, and I know it's kind of a yard sale, but still, that's somebody that they had a long-term commitment to, and they're willing a year and a half later to entertain trade talks with him. And I asked Bruins fans who love DeBrusk and would want to bring him back, I would say, well, why do you think that is? Why do you think that Vancouver is willing to give up on a guy a year and a half into him being there when he's in his prime? They don't think that he can be part of their long-term solution with a high draft pick this June. Like, they don't think he could be a good, strong veteran presence with a young core coming up. Like, to me, not only do we see his inconsistencies live and in color here in Boston for 7 seasons or whatever it was, and again, I acknowledge his skill and the type of player he can be when he wants to be. But I look at where the Bruins are right now, and okay, they could use him in this very second, sure. But with the young players you have on the horizon, do you need another 6 or 7 years of Jake DeBrusk when you have, Hagen's on the way? Who may end up being a wing for all we know. You have Zellers, you have all sorts of prospects and draft picks on the horizon. I just think that, I don't know. He also had some off ice issues here in Boston, with at least one coach we know of. Right. And so I don't know. I think that the Bruins should be moving forward. I think his skill set is nice right now. And it's in the top 6, middle 6, I do, but that's a very short-sighted window I'm talking about. I just think long-term to have his contract, even if there's any retention, it's just like, you had Jake DeBrusk in his youth to his prime. Do you want that same player from the tail end of his prime to his dying days, like in terms of his career? That's bad choice of words. You know what I mean? Like the end of his career. Like, I just don't. You think he's inconsistent earlier? How do you think he's going to be at 35? I'm all set with it.
Well, he's not quite there yet.
No. But look at his contract though. If you take on his contract, how many years does he have left, and how old is he?
Yeah,
he's got 5 years left.
How old is he right now? 29.
29.
Okay, so you want him at 34, 35? Like, I'm all set.
Also,
he might be dead by then.
His stats.
I hate the way I use words sometimes. I got to tell you guys.
But so, like, to just give like a comp of what his season's been like, because I'm sure a lot of people lost track of him since he's left. He's played 56 games. He's got 28 points, 13 goals, 15 assists. He's minus 15, which is probably more to say about the team. But like where that would put him on the Bruins, if you wanted to like see where he would slide in terms of like his impact, 28 points is the same amount of points that Victor Arvidsson has and Casey Middlestat has. Fraser Minten has one more goal and one more point than him. And then everybody else, like there's a chunk of Bruins that are way higher than that, right? Like then you take a big jump up to Elias Lindholm and Pavel Zacha with 37 points. And then Geeky's got 54 and Plasta's got 71. So like he would be in this same tier as who's Nadinov, Arvidsson, and Middlestat. My question is, who would he be replacing, and like what is the need for it?
Yeah, I'm all set on DeBrusk. Like I don't want that contract. I don't want him until he's 34. Yeah, like you said, like half a point per game this season. Last year, 48 points in 82, so a little over that. The year before, his last year in Boston, 40 points in 80 games, half a point per game. Like, yeah, you can find that in much cheaper form to all the guys you highlighted. Like, yeah, Arvidsson and Middlestat have that many points, but in fewer games because they each missed a little bit of time with injury. Like, who's Nadinov is exactly half a point per game.
Younger, plays harder.
Yeah, I don't.
More versatile, plays multiple positions. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, you would have to give me something to take on that DeBrusk contract. Like I will say, like, this feels like the kind of thing where we know the Bruins and Vancouver have talked in the past, right? Like whether it's Pavel Zacha or, when there's the potential of them potentially trading for Elias Lindholm before they ultimately sign him. So like those two front offices, I think, have talked a lot, but I also think Vancouver tends to leak things in terms of interest. I don't think this is coming from the Bruins side. And my guess, and I haven't done a ton of deep dive reporting on this, but my guess is that there's not really much interest from the Bruins end, and that this is maybe more coming from the Vancouver side, just trying to gin up some interest.
I feel the same way. And honestly, if Vancouver was willing to retain, what does that say about, their feelings on the player? We just signed him a year and a half ago. He's in his prime. He has skill. He has speed. But, we want to get rid of him so bad, we'll retain. Because to your point, Scott, like, why would the Bruins even like what's in it for them? And again, I'm not saying that Jake DeBrusk right now isn't a good player on a contending team. I'm not speaking to like his abilities or his skill set, especially when he wants to be a difference maker. But if you're talking long-term fit and you know what you have in the player, he was here. So I think, I loved DeBrusk when he was, in his first couple of years. I think for a younger player, I thought he played with a lot of jam that, quite frankly, I just didn't see as much later on in his tenure in Boston. Although I will say his 22-23 season, the record-breaking year for the team, playing with Bergeron and Marchand, he was on pace for, probably 67 to 7, I think high 60s in points had he not missed 2 months of the year after breaking his leg, which was a ballsy performance at Fenway. Like he broke his leg so he's had his moments. I just think, like, simply put, I'm all set. I think the Bruins should be all set. Like, move on. You rip that Band-Aid of Carlo and Coyle and, DeBrusk. I know DeBrusk wasn't a trade deadline move last year, but just, I just think that it's just time to move on. You have younger players in the way. Let him be somebody else's problem. I think Jake would be great in Detroit, right? I think, for what they're trying to do right now, I think he fits their plans. Like, they're on the rise. They're in the playoffs. He's a speedy player that could play with some other guys there. You want to stay in. The other part too is I don't think he wants to come back to Boston. He's from Western Canada, which is, I think he's from Vancouver area. I mean, the Edmonton area.
Edmonton, yeah.
So, Seattle, okay, he's over the border, but he's not too far from where he grew up. I mean, and Detroit's kind of, that middle ground. But I just think, I don't think the player is bad. I think he has skill. I think he has upside. I think he's a good player in the right situation for the right time frame. It's not Boston for me right now.
He also still has a full no trade clause this year, so
that I'm sure he's happy to give up for Boston.
Yeah,
go back across the continent where he's half hated, half loved. You know,
we're actually all of his friends. Like a lot of his friends aren't even there anymore. But
right?
like Pasta is and McBoy is, but
Yeah.
there's a good chunk of those guys that aren't. I have a question for you. This is kind of a silly, stupid question, but are there any former Bruins that you would want them to try to bring back?
Well, Carlo, no. DeBrusk, no. Marchand, I think he is. You know, I think he's. I don't think his body's holding up. You know, he's playing good for Florida, but I think he might be. He's not going anywhere, right? He's not going to Florida. And for a lot of reasons we talked about in the past, like you have to move on if you're the Bruins. And who are the other options that we're talking about here?
I mean, Charlie Coyle's having a really good season in Columbus, but one, they're not selling because they're in the playoff race, and two, you've
against you.
like Fraser Minton has already established himself as at least a really good third line center, so you wouldn't really have a need for Coyle, anyways.
I'm trying to think of some players around the league. Bridget, are you referring to simply like last year's deadline? Or are you talking just like
no,
anyone? I'm trying to think of like who's out there. Like you want like Ryan Donato or Fliggy? You know?
that's a throwback. Yeah.
How about Patrice Bergeron? You know?
Yeah, that'd be a good
one. No one's really jumping on mine, but maybe it's because you know these players bounce around so much. I can't really think of all the guys that are gone.
Yeah,
right now,
no, and it's like, I mean, if you think about it, it's like they don't really have a need for them, and that's why they're not here right now. But like, you know, maybe some people wish they had Allmark still, or some people wish they re-signed Bertuzzi, or you know, just there's been some guys that were shorter term too that kind of got away that maybe you wish they still had, but.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of players in the past that came back for a second tour with the Bruins.
I mean, right now we have Sean Corrali.
Yep, Sean. Yeah, there you go, Sean Corrali. Michael Ryder had a second stint with Montreal after winning a cup with Boston. After going to, I think Dallas for a little bit. So like that was weird to see Ryder again in the Habs jersey after having all those battles with the Canadians. With the Canadians against the Bruins, and then with the Bruins against the Habs when they won a cup. That was interesting. I'm trying to think. I don't know.
So no one.
I feel like well, they tried it with Milan Lucic.
Oh yes, right. That's one I was probably thinking of too. That I couldn't put my hand on. Hey, question for you guys. This is random, but like, who's a player from? Maybe you can, if you want to do all time, go for it. But I think maybe Ray Bourque would be the answer. But like. Maybe stick to like the 2000s and 20 teens era. Like who was the weirdest Bruin to see in a different sweater?
Ooh.
Actually,
Marchand.
Probably Marchand, right?
Yeah, I mean like Marchand and Char are the two obvious, which like Char is interesting because obviously we saw him in other sweaters before he got to Boston, but then he was here so long and such a mainstay that like I remember just thinking or assuming like, oh yeah, of course he's going to finish his career in Boston. There was, you know, towards the end, it was like just 1 year deals. They'd always work something out. And then it's like, oh wait, they're not re-signing him, but he still wants to play.
Yeah.
And then like, so seeing him in Washington and then obviously the Islanders at the very end, that was weird. And especially facing him in that playoff series when he was in Washington, like that was very strange.
Yeah. One that comes to my mind is Timmy T. Seeing Timmy like wearing the like the Panthers back when they had those terrible Reebok uniforms, and then I think in Dallas he was wearing like a Florida Panthers helmet in a Dallas Stars jersey because it was like, oh boy, Timmy he fell from grace pretty quick after the Bruins lost to. Well, his last game with the Bruins was when they lost to the Capitals, right? Joel Ward's overtime goal.
Yeah,
and then his contract was up, and then he just went to Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tuukka was there. It made sense at the time. Also, wow, my brain's just all over the place. Why did they draft Malcolm Subban when you had Tuukka Rask, like who was like very, very much young and entering his like prime as a number one goalie? Why was that a first round pick on Subban?
Yeah, it was a late first that I never understood. Like, what even was at that the time, all about? I don't know.
You had a top 5-10 goalie in the league.
That is
entering his prime. I know. But while we're talking about Timmy's exit, it's like, well, then, you know, Tuukka steps up. He's in his prime now, entering his prime, and you draft Malcolm Subban in the first round. What the fuck was that all about? All due respect. What was that?
Did he play a single? Maybe he played a single game for the Bruins. Did he? I remember talking to him at training camp, and that was it. Like that was my only interaction with him. Was one like interview at training
only had
camp
a couple
10
of
years ago.
He only had a couple of games in the NHL too.
He played 2 games in Boston. He actually played 87 games total in the NHL.
Who was that with? Was it with Vegas?
He was one of the original Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, I thought so.
He was their first backup.
Yeah. What was that? Who was that? Sweeney? Or was that Chiarelli?
No, it was Chiarelli. It was 2012.
What were they possibly thinking with that? Like,
I want to look at this draft, see who they missed out on.
In case our franchise goalie gets hurt, let's draft another goalie. Like, I don't get it.
So they took him 24th overall. Pick right after was Jordan Schmaltz, who's now like he's making a name for himself in hockey media.
Yep.
I mean, it wasn't a great draft once he got down that low. Brady Shea went 28th.
That's not the point, though. It's philosophically, what are you doing drafting a goalie?
Right.
If you needed a goalie, once in a while it happens. But he literally had a top 10 goalie in the league. I mean, how old was Rask at that point? Like 26, maybe.
Yeah.
Like what are you doing? Whatever. Okay. So final thoughts, maybe heading into the resuming of play here. God bless you, Bridget. We mentioned that Charlie Coyle is a guy that maybe you like to see back in Boston. If everything, if the world were aligning, that's obviously not the case based on his play. He is with the Blue Jackets. They are chasing Boston. They're 4 points behind him for the last playoff spot in the wild card picture. I think they're even closer at making the playoffs in their own division. You see them on Thursday. So if you're the Bruins, and this goes for the entire league, especially for teams trying to make the playoffs, but you got to hit the ground running here. There's no buffer from, we had 3 weeks off and nope. 25 games left. They all matter. And it starts on Thursday with the Blue Jackets. So how do you guys feel about that first opponent coming back from break? Is it a good thing? I think it is. It could be a bad thing if they don't show up, but I think it's a good thing for their psyche. And then just, thoughts on the final 25 game stretch here. Yeah.
I mean, you said it's a sprint. I think it's 25 games in 48 days. So it's more than every other day the rest of the way. And yeah, it's a huge one right out of the gate. And I am going to be fascinated because so most of the Olympic guys were back at practice Tuesday. So originally the Bruins were supposed to practice Monday and have Tuesday off. Probably ended up working out nicely for it. Monday, obviously the blizzard just shut everything down. So it actually gave those Olympic guys an extra day to get there for Tuesday. So David Pastrnak, Hampus Lindholm, Elias Lindholm, Henry Jokiharju, Jonas Korpisalo were all there. So they're all going to get, at least a few days of practice / morning skate on Thursday. And McAvoy and Swayman, like Bridget mentioned in her opening shift, like we're going to see, right? Like, so they were in DC late Tuesday night. Bruins practice is scheduled for 11 a.m. Wednesday. We'll see if they got here in time or if they are just back on game day on Thursday. I think McAvoy, obviously, you're throwing in no matter what. Swayman, like, if he's not at practice today, I think Korpisalo is starting Thursday. I can't imagine Swayman comes back, only gets a morning skate in, and then they start him. But the other thing I'm interested in here is they have been focusing on special teams quite a bit and the penalty kill in particular. Sturm has said that they're changing some things, really system-wise, structure-wise, not necessarily personnel-wise. Well, McAvoy and Swayman are going to have like a little bit of like to get into like X's and O's, like a little bit of catch-up there because they are both big parts of your penalty kill. So that will also be something interesting to monitor is, you got to try everything you can to hit the ground running here because it is a big game, but I'm sure on both sides there's going to be some rust.
Definitely. And McAvoy's, both of them, right? But in McAvoy's case, just thinking about somebody who's your top defenseman, maybe Swayman, they give the the night off to Korpisalo, right? But there is no, I mean, theoretically, you shouldn't be replacing Charlie McAvoy. He needs to be in the lineup that game. And if you've seen the couple of days that Team USA has had, you're talking about jumping back 6-7 hours in time zone. You're talking about multiple flights. We've seen them go from Italy to Miami to Washington, and then for McAvoy to be back to Boston. All these guys have been partying. Similarly to if they had won a Stanley Cup, the difference is you win a Stanley Cup, you're off until next fall. These guys have to hop back into games right now, and if you've seen some of the videos out there, they've been enjoying it. So I'd expect probably not Charlie McAvoy's best game, but maybe he'll play hungover. He'll play more guilty, and he'll play well. I don't know.
And I guess the equalizer there is Zach Werenski is going to be in the same boat. So
that's true.
It's top defenseman for top defenseman.
Good point. Who has the best depth, right? They'll both be on 9th floor watching. Okay. Any final thoughts from the two of you before we sign out?
None from me. I think I'm good.
Any college hockey thoughts, Bridget? Any important prospect stuff we missed over the Olympic break? Obviously, I think Hagen's tied or surpassed his point total from last year already, and I want to say in like 10 less games or 9 less games, and he still has a lot of time to go. And Dean's playing well still, and Zellers is playing well.
Yeah, I think I mentioned last podcast or the podcast before, he had a hat trick on Saturday. So Hagen's did. So yeah, he's doing well. The women's playoffs start today. So I have to try to make my way back to Boston, and I was stuck yesterday. So let's hope I make it up there.
Is he somebody that you guys, and I promise we'll, Bridge, I know you have an interview. Is he somebody you guys expect to see in a Spoke to be at some point this spring? How do you guys see that playing out? Obviously, it depends on where the Hagen's. It depends on where the Bruins go, how far Hagen's season goes. But theoretically, there should be a window no matter what. Where BC's done, Bruins are still going. What are we doing here?
Well, I mean, if they somehow, and they're not projected, like they're not the number one team in the country the way that they have been the past few years. Like they're a bubble NCAA tournament team right now. So I wouldn't say they're the favorite to do this, but if they did make it all the way to the Frozen Four in Vegas, that wouldn't leave a lot of time with the Bruins regular season. After that point, I think it's only 2 weeks, Scott. After the final date of that to the end of the Bruins regular season. So at that point, maybe you don't do it because there's not, that you're blowing a year and it's for what, like 5 games or something.
I mean, like if they went all the way to the national championship, that's April 11th, and the Bruins only have 2 regular season games left after that, and one of them's the very next day. So you can probably cross that out. So if they did, and I would be surprised if they do, but if they did go on that kind of run, then you're only talking about like the final regular season game, and then you'd be deciding like, hey, is he in for the playoffs if you're a playoff team?
Yeah.
What if they lost Hockey East, or maybe they win Hockey East, so they get into the tournament, but they lose in the regionals or something? Like in a situation like that, do you think the Bruins will try to get him into the lineup at some point, or do you see them just sending him to Providence? Or
I mean, if they were to lose in the regionals and not get to the Frozen Four, he could be in their lineup March 31st against Dallas, and that would give them quick count 8 games. Like that's 8 games between that and the end of the regular season.
Would you be in favor of that?
I think so. I think he's probably signing. The way he's played post Thanksgiving is he's taken that jump that you wanted to see. Yeah, I would just have a hard time seeing them like telling him like, we kind of want you to go back for another. Like I don't think they'd do that. I think they would be ready to sign him.
Yeah, I don't think he's going back for another year. Yeah. He's not going to play a junior year there.
No, he's going pro. It's just a matter of, which side of 9 to 5
immediately, and is it next year, or you like the beginning of next
year?
I
mean, once he signs, he's, as long as it's an option, he's playing an NHL game because he's going to want to start the contract.
Exactly.
Like that's just part of those negotiations with the higher end prospects.
Yeah. So
and what would you
just throw him right in there?
Right. Well, what would you say to fans that would say why not start his contract, his entry level deal next year to get a full year out of him. Because that's the other side of the argument is it worth burning it this year and whatnot.
Yeah, because he's he's the best prospect you've had in a decade, and you don't want to piss him off.
That's
like,
exactly it.
Real simple answer.
Yeah,
like that. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, exactly. It does get political. So looks like maybe he'll be at the North End and not Federal Hill. But with that said, thank you all very much for listening. Enjoy the first Bruins game in what feels like 3 years on Thursday, and we'll be back on Friday to discuss. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.